for OU softball. So I have 3 questions for this team heading into fall ball. And now remember, a question mark is not necessarily a weakness. We got a lot of time to sort out the real strengths and weaknesses of this team. But here's 3 question marks I do have going into fall ball. Question number 1 for me is probably the biggest storyline right now, and it will probably be the biggest storyline once the 2025 season gets here as well. Who's the ace? Now, the good news with this is I think there's a lot of candidates. 2 pitchers with a ton of experience coming in via the transfer portal in Sam Landry and Bella Smith. 133 combined wins between the two. Kirsten Deal is back for her 3rd year and probably the pre-fall front runner to be the ace this year. Peyton Monticelli's back. Audrey Lowry, a true freshman, comes in with an incredible amount of upside. So the good news is that there's options, and options of all kinds. You have returning talent. You've got portal talent. You have incoming freshman talent as well. But who's the ace? Who's your best when you go on the road to Florida this year? Who's the best when you go on the road to Alabama or when you play Texas this year? You are going to need an ace. And I say that because every team at OU that's won a title has had an ace. Sometimes that true ace doesn't emerge until later in the season. Sometimes someone evolves into a different version of themselves in the postseason. Saw it last year with Kelly Maxwell. She took it to a completely different level. G. Juarez just a few years ago did something very similar. But that's going to need to happen. And who is that pitcher? It's highly likely this won't be answered until the season actually starts. It's going to be hard to find out who your true ace is in fall ball. But I'm very interested to see who stands out in the circle in the fall against an offense that I think is going to be really good top to bottom. If I'm guessing right now, Kirsten Deal is the pitcher that we're talking about as the ace. She's had some very bright moments in her career, but consistency is a big word for KD in the fall and going into next season as well. She's got the most OU experience, and we'll see if that's a big factor for her in a very, very important year 3 for KD. Question number 2, and I will remind everyone again, a question is not a weakness. A question is not a concern. It's just a question as to right now. Questions can get answered, just like questions at this time for last year's team were eventually answered. But question number 2 that I have for this team going into the fall is defense. What did it take for this program to win 4 consecutive titles? Well, it took a lot. It didn't just take one thing. It took a lot of pitching. It took a lot of offense. It took a lot of clutch. But maybe the most unsung thing about that historic run was the elite defense. Grace Lyons at short during that stretch. Jada in center field. Kinsey behind the plate. Riley Boone in the outfield. You know the names during that stretch. Yes, OU routinely had the best pitching and the best offense as well. But it also routinely had the best defense too. And they didn't just make the routine plays. They were able to make the extraordinary plays as well. Consistently, I might add. So how good will this team be defensively? Well, it's an incredibly high bar to expect that they'll be comparable to even last year's team on the defensive side. And I don't expect them to rob every home run ball like Jada did throughout her career, but the defense has been a real strength at Oklahoma for a long time now. Was that because of a special group or because it's in the DNA of the program? I would tend to believe it's the latter, but there's a lot to prove defensively with so many new starters this year. I think there's a chance you could have up to 6 new starters in the field for this team, which is a lot, especially when they're at positions such as catcher, third base, shortstop, and center field, where defense is a high priority. I'll feel a lot better about this question if I see during the fall that the defense really shines throughout and they're consistent throughout. And if we're talking about a team that's going to be able to help out the pitching staff behind it, because that's the thing. I listed pitcher as my first question. Maybe could have listed defense as my first question here. But the defense being one of the best in the SEC could go a long way in helping answer how good the pitching staff is going to be in 2025. Question number 3 is one word: clutch. Do I need to list all the clutch moments over the last 4 years? I mean, I can. I got time. Kinsey against Clemson, Jada against Florida in the WCWS, Tiare Jennings in Stillwater, just to name a few, right? But does this team have the magic that we've seen recently? Does this team have the confidence and the clutch gene that OU softball has been known for? Now, to be fair, for a large portion of last season, we were wondering why that team that won a national championship wasn't coming up with the big hit. Didn't feel like they had the clutch gene of years past. But guess what? They came up with the big hit when they needed to at the end of the season. And now the question is, can this team with so many new faces replicate that? And who are those players that you can count on to do that in those big spots? That can only be answered during the season and in big moments. but this team will be in a lot of tight games this year. Do they have the clutch factor of teams past? Don't know that just yet, but you'll need it in the SEC. You'll absolutely need it in the postseason as well. They've had it in Oklahoma City on the big stage, and if this team is to make it back to the big stage this year, they're going to need some clutch hits to win that 5th consecutive national championship. So question number 3 for me, the clutch, the magic, the Sooner magic, does it carry over from one team to the next? Those are my 3 question marks entering fall ball. If you've got different questions, if you have an answer to some of the questions that I have, or you just like to comment generally, just drop it in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching.